Hey guys, it's Darren, and like I promised, I was going to share my testimony with y'all. Sorry for the. I got a really generic setup right now. I actually have my phone working, and it's actually working pretty good. My camera mount, ironically, is my helmet, and since I can't ride because it's raining and it's cold outside, it's just what better way to use my helmet than as a tripod? So it works. Uh, Hope everybody's doing great. This is going to be hopefully what's going to become more of a series of videos that I'm going to be posting on my YouTube page, and I'll make sure that I send out the link once I get everything set. I'm going to try to get some different equipment. Hopefully that one day I'll have different camera and different microphone. I don't know if you guys can hear me. I don't know what kind of level this is going to have. I did a couple tests and it sounds like it's going to be pretty good. So we're going to shoot with this for now. So first of all, most of you know that I am one, and most importantly, a born again Christian. I'm also a licensed Southern Baptist minister, although I don't really do much in the ministry as with the Southern Baptist right now. No particular reason. I'm just not with any church right now. I feel God is leading me to be elsewhere, and it's no particular church to say right now. Um, so my journey is pretty much, you know, I grew up very, very normal in a very normal household. Uh, both, well, I shouldn't say normal because if you know my family, there is nothing normal about us. I mean, it's normal to us, but to other people, it may not be. So we may be very odd. I don't know. But was blessed. I grew up with both my parents. My mom and dad were married for, I believe it was like 32 years before mom passed away back in 1997. Uh, Dad passed away in 2010. But I was blessed. I grew up with both my parents. A lot of my friends, all their parents had separated or divorced, and they were living with step parents or two or three step parents, step brothers, sisters. I was blessed, and I grew up with my mom and dad. Mom and dad worked all the time, you know, to provide for us kids, and we were truly blessed by that. Not a lot of people can say that, but mom and dad did the best they could, and they did an outstanding job. Uh, there's six of us kids in the family, and we all, I guess, for the best part, I guess, grew up pretty decently. Um, so, which is kind of a shock to people because part of my testimony is, and a lot of questions I get asked is if I grew up in such a blessed household, how did I end up in the occult, and how did I go from the occult to Christianity? And I'm going to tell you, it wasn't an easy transition. I mean, it pretty much was. I mean, it was pretty much cut and dry, but the journey alone was kind of what's a good word I could use? Trying at times to be good, because when you're in the occult and you invite entities and stuff into your life and you renounce those entities and you understand how these entities work and what their descriptions are, you tend to kind of just wonder why, you know, you got into it in the first place. And second of all, you kind of wonder, how do you get through it? And it goes back to that old saying to where it's like, um, know your enemy. I know my enemies. I know exactly who they are. I know exactly what they do. I know exactly what they can do. But most importantly, I have an ally, and his name is Jesus Christ. And according to my tattoo, I don't know if y'all can see that or not. I got a new tattoo. It says Luke 10:19. It's give me all authority over all my enemies. If you don't know the verse, it says, I will give you authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and overcome the power of your enemies, and you will not face harm. Excuse me. So, like I said, I was going to share my testimony. Not sure really where to start. I mean, like I said, I grew up in a very normal. I'm going to try to adjust my camera here just a second because I got lines on my phone, and I want to make sure it's lined up. Cool. And I guess the great part to start is how I grew up. And I grew up in like I said, very blessed family. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that I belonged to a very loving family. And anybody that knew my mom and dad know what I'm saying is true. I'm sorry, I got long legs. I got to relax somehow. I guess a good place to start, we moved to Fallon, Nevada. And for those who don't know where Fallon, Nevada is, if you are ever in Reno, you go 70 miles east, and it's on the middle of the desert. It's called the Oasis in Nevada for a reason, because there is literally nothing except Bernalillo. But anyways, we grew up in a very small farming community, also a military town. We had to have a military base there. More notably known now for the Top Gun flight school. So we had grown up, all of our lives around farming, not really doing farming. We never really worked on a farm. Mom and dad, mom was a waitress and a hostess for many years, I think like 30-something years. And dad had done different jobs. I mean, he was a farmhand. He was a carpenter, excuse me, and also did a lot of retail work and stuff like that. And of course, dad always tried to do these little side gigs that never really worked, but he did all right. I mean, he always provided for us. And the one thing, and just kind of give you an example of the kind of blessings that I had growing up, and my brother Jay and we talk about this all the time, and it's the stupidest thing. It's not, I shouldn't say stupid because that just kind of cheapens it, but it was just the smallest thing. I remember one Christmas I was about 4 or 5 years old, and we had gotten all these different toys. I mean, I think I got this G.I. Joe, or what was it called? Jungle Jim. I think it's something, Jungle Jim or something like that. And it came with like a little truck, and it came with a net that caught a rhino, and it came with a little rhino. And I remember that was one of the gifts I got. And I'm going to fix this real quick because it's driving me nuts. And Jay and I opened this one box, and it was just super heavy. We couldn't really remember figure out what was in this box. And when we opened it, there was different size pieces of wood, long pieces, short pieces and stuff, and they were all painted red and stuff like this. And we're like, oh, building blocks, cool, and ironically, that was something, it wasn't bought. My dad had cut all these little pieces of 2x4s, different size woods. I believe most of them were like 2x4, and just cut them in different shapes and lengths, and painted them and gave them to us boys. And Jay and I absolutely loved them. I mean, we played with these things. I mean, any toy that we had from that moment on, those blocks were part of it. I mean, growing up, back in like 78 when the original Star Wars came out, I'm telling you how old I am right now. And don't do the math, don't hurt yourself. I'm 54. I had received a X-Wing fighter from one of my brothers, one of my older brothers. And those blocks became the space station, I guess is what you would call it. We use them for Hot Wheels and stuff like that, but that was just the kind of things that my dad did. I mean, there was Christmases where mom really couldn't afford much for us, and I remember one year I was about, oh my goodness, I would say about 18, 19 years old. And at the time I had long hair. Jay and I both had hair at one time. We had long hair. And mom couldn't really afford anything. And she felt bad. And we're like, don't even worry about it, mom. We're good, But she would just felt so heartbroken that she couldn't provide anything for us for Christmas. And so what happened, she had ordered these two travel hairbrushes because Jay and I always walked around with hairbrushes, to make sure our hair looked good. And they folded up and everything like that. And we're like, she goes, I'm sorry, I wish it could have been more. I'm like, no, this is cool. This is great. We loved it. But yeah, so I grew up, in like I said, a very loving family. So that's what kind of makes people wonder how I got into Satanism and how I got into the occult. And honestly, I can't really tell you. I mean, I know how it happened. Obviously, I was there. Um, a lot of people are going to sit there and say, "Well, it's because you listen to metal music." It had nothing to do with metal music. It had absolutely nothing to do with metal music. I mean, I look at bands like Slayer or Motley Crue and stuff. Yeah, I listened to Motley Crue a lot growing up in the '80s. I was never into Slayer. I mean, I just always thought it was super weird that they were using such a heavy satanic overtone to sell records, and I was just like, okay, whatever. Um, to dial back a little bit, before I got into heavy metal and hard rock music, I was listening to stuff like, I think the first album I bought was ABBA, Voulez-Vous, all because I thought the blonde girl was so cute. So I had kind of a crush on her and stuff. And then from there, I was listening to Kiss because Jay and his friends were listening to Kiss. And one year we dressed up like Kiss for Halloween. I think everybody in the 70s and 80s dressed up like Kiss at one point of their life. But I was never really into it. I think the only really hard album I had, I think I got the Pulse. They came out with different versions. Each band member put out their own album, and I think if I remember correctly, I got the Paul Stanley one, and I think my brother Jay got Gene Simmons. I don't remember. Either that or it was Ace Frehley. I can't really remember. So we got those and stuff, and so we were listening to Kiss and stuff, and Jay had bought all these albums, Kiss Destroyer, and I can't remember, something Dress to Kill or something like that. I'm sure somebody will correct me on that. So I really wasn't really that influenced by music. I was listening to other bands like Duran Duran, Billy Idol, and then one day I'm sitting there at home, and I think Jay and I were home together, and all of a sudden, he was always in his room, and he was playing this music, and I heard this song, and I was like, what the heck is that? That's not what I said. I'm paraphrasing. I'm keeping this very PG, and if at any time I don't, I'm sorry. And I walked in his room, and I looked at him like, dude, who is this? And he goes, oh, it's a band called Dio. I'm like, Dio? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, cool, right on. He showed me the cassette tape, and I was like looking at it, and it had this devil on it, and if I remember correctly, it's on the Holy Diver album, and so it had this priest, sinking into it. I'm like, okay, well, there's that, and I was like, it really didn't faze me, but that song, Rainbow in the Dark, just like, I don't know, it entranced me, and I was like, oh, he goes, oh, if you think this is cool, listen to this band, and so he started, let me listen to different bands and stuff like that. And of course, I tried to sneak in his room. I don't know if he knows this, but yeah, I snuck in his room quite a bit to listen to tapes and stuff, and I borrowed tapes from him and stuff like that. But it was just music to me. That's all it was. So to get to the point of how I got into the occult, my first introduction into the occult, we were watching can't remember. I think it was like 2020 or something like that, and it was talking about metal music and stuff like that. So I really wasn't paying attention, because back in the day they had what, us in the spiritual warfare ministry called the satanic panic. Everything was demonic. You can't listen to this. It's the devil. Um, so it really wasn't that. And I was just like going, okay, whatever. And I was sitting there, of course, with Jay, we're trying to defend, oh yeah, that's not what it's about. That's not what it means. And so the thing that actually introduced me to the occult, Mom had always bought those tabloids. Mom was like addicted to tabloids. She was always reading like the National Enquirer, National Examiner, World Weekly News and stuff. And I believe it was the World Weekly News that I was flipping through it one day and I saw this guy wearing dark clothes and this weird looking I don't know, some kind of headpiece. It's just a weird headpiece. I can't really call it a hat because it really wasn't a hat, but it was black and it had horns on it, and he's standing there, and all this stuff behind him. There was some weird symbol right behind him, which I later found out, and as I got into it, found out it was Baphomet, or commonly known as the Satanic Pentagram with the goat's head in it. And I'm like, ooh, that's weird. What is this? And so I started reading on it, and it was Anton LaVey was the guy's name. So I started reading about that and stuff, and the more I read about, Anton LaVey, the Church of Satan, what they did, I was like going, oh, that's oddly intriguing, and for some reason, and I couldn't even tell you why I even began to even get fascinated by it, because I was really not in any kind of mental delusion or anything like that. It was just for some odd reason I got fascinated by it. I saw this and stuff, and just started looking at different things, and went to the library and looked at different books on Satanism. Yeah, they actually had books in the library. They were more expose-ish, as opposed to, in to or for or against. They were just very middle ground on it. So it was just kind of like we're just gonna, this is what it is, all about that. So I started, reading more about it, and I'd sneak and go to the library and sneak these books, and I'd be looking at them and stuff like that, and it was just kind of something that just intrigued me. And you wouldn't know it by now, or right now, but those guys that grew up with me in school who know me know that I was not popular. Although everybody knew me, but I wasn't part of the in crowd. I wasn't popular. I wasn't hanging out with cool kids like that. I was just kind of like off to the side and just kind of like trying to blend in with the blades of grass, so to speak. And I just kept to myself, and I got picked on a lot too, because I was tiny, skinny. I've always been skinny. One of my favorite things is when people kind of get in my face and stuff, and I don't like fighting. I hate fighting. I'll do it if I need to. I mean, it's going to come down to you and me. One or two things are going to happen. Either you're going to beat me or I'm going to beat you. One of the two. That's the outcome. But that's something else. That's just the way I am. I'm a very protective person, especially when it comes to my family, especially the younger members of my family. But yeah, I was picked on a lot. Very skinny, very short, and like I was going to say, when somebody ever gets in my face and stuff and they don't think I could do much, I look at them and it's like, look, I've been skinny all my life, been picked on all my life, so don't you think some point in my life I might have learned how to defend myself? And that usually backs people down. So yeah, I was really not popular. I was just kind of, like I said, blending off to the side. I don't really remember any of my friends that I grew up with ever getting into it. Um, I remember when I was 13 years old, I got busted for shoplifting, and I don't even know why I even said it. That somehow I ended up in counseling. Because here's this normal kid. Everybody knew me. Everybody knew my mom. Everybody knew my dad. Everybody knew my brother. And, we were known. Because mom worked in the most popular restaurant in Fallon, so everybody knew me. So instead of we weren't poor either, and people, well, I guess by social standards we would have been, but I didn't need what I stole. I stole a pair of sunglasses, and the ironic thing was I had a pair of sunglasses in my pocket when I did it, so I didn't need the sunglasses. I just wanted them. So I was sitting there, my mom, they called my mom, they called my dad, and my dad come pick me up and stuff, and I just did not want to deal with my dad, and dad was really cool about it. He just kind of looked down at me and said, "Did you learn your lesson?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Okay." Mom, on the other hand, we were back, that was back in the day when spanking was acceptable. And so, yeah, mom came up and she talked to me. She cried the whole time, but she laid down the law, and spanked me like a responsible parent would have. That had nothing to do with me getting into Satanism, by the way. Don't sit there going, "See, it does." No, it doesn't. Use your head. So I said something on it, and I don't know what I said, but for some reason I ended up in counseling. And I remember talking to this psychiatrist. Her name was Lynn. And a funny story, I was sitting there telling all this stuff about, Satanism, and how, you know, I don't even know why I was even talking to her about it. It was like I wasn't even talking to her about it. I knew nothing about it except what I've read in uh, the World Weekly News or at the library. That's all I knew about it. I wasn't even practicing. You know, I was scared to death of God, to be honest with you. From the early age, I was terrified of God. I was scared to death. I better not do this or God's going to strike me down, kind of thing. And so I was in counseling for this, and I was just started talking about Satanism with this woman, and I was like, why? It's like I look back at it now, I'm like, what was wrong with me? And she had told my mom that I had some weird fascination with Satanism. And mom never really confronted me on it. Dad never really confronted me on it. And it was just something that I guess was like, well, it might be a problem, but I don't know, kind of thing. And so it just kind of went by the wayside. I did my community service like I was ordered to do. Worked out my fines and stuff like that. And I remember one night we were sitting there, and I told Tim Gaines this. I don't know if you guys know who Tim Gaines is, but Tim Gaines is the former bass player of Stryper, and he's a good friend of mine. And I had told him, I said, how I got into Stryper was, and I got into Stryper. I mean, if you see me in high school I'll get back, but like my senior year, I was really into Stryper. I mean, I had every album and stuff. And matter of fact, Stryper was the first concert I ever went to. We were sitting at home one night, and I was about, oh my goodness, I had to be about 13, 14 years old. And we were watching, I think it was like 60 Minutes, and they were doing a story on Fallon, Nevada, So we're like, hey, we made 60 Minutes. This is going to be cool. So we're watching it, and we're waiting for the story to come on about, Fallon, Nevada, and they did the story on Striper, and I'm like going, oh, okay, a metal Christian band. Oh, what did they do? Oh, they're throwing Bibles. Oh, okay, these bumblebees are throwing Bibles out at the audience. And if you know Striper, they wore yellow and black everywhere, stripes everywhere, hence the name Striper. So we're watching it, and I'm like, oh, okay, like that. So we didn't have internet at the time. So, of course, I couldn't Google Striper or anything like that. So I was listening, you know, to the music on the TV. I was like, it's not bad, you know. And I made that comment to Jay, and for some reason that persuaded him to buy me a Striper poster for Christmas. I had no idea what a Christian metal was. Or I don't even think I even knew that Striper was a Christian band. I didn't even think about it. And so he bought me this poster, and it was one of the older posters. And I told Tim which one it was, and he goes, "Oh yeah, yeah." And I said that one cracked me up because honestly, I hate to say it, and it's kind of funny though. And he kind of got a chuckle out of it. I thought they were all chicks. You know, I was like, yeah, they're what are these? Are these girls? Is that a girl? I thought Michael was a girl, and thought Oz was black. So there's that. So I'm sitting there looking at this poster and stuff like this. Well, underneath the logo for Striper was Isaiah 53:5, and it said, "For he was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we're healed." I was like, oh, that's a Bible verse. So I looked it up in the Bible, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I bought my first Striper album. It was Soldiers Under Command. And I think Jay was working in Reno at the time. I don't remember if he was, no, wait. Well, maybe he was working in Reno. I don't remember. But he come home one day, and he goes, hey, I don't even remember the date, but it's such day. It was like, I think it was summertime. He goes, I got a surprise for you. And I was like, what's that? And he showed me, and he had got me a ticket to go see Striper at the Pioneer Center here in Reno. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And he goes, no, because I want you to go to a concert with me. And Jay at the time had seen, oh my goodness, Van Halen, Queen's or Quiet Riot, Iron Maiden. I mean, he's seen a lot of bands that I wanted to go see, and he would never take me. So it was kind of a huge treat to be him taking me to this concert. And Dad had gotten a hotel room across the street from the Pioneer Center. It's not there no more. It's a big parking lot now. But Dad went to bed because Dad was working here in Reno at a casino here in Reno as a sous chef. So while Dad slept, Jay and I went to the concert, you know. And so that was really cool. So I really got into Striper after that. After that, I think I bought Yellow and Black Attack, and this was before To Hell with the Devil came out. So I'm listening to Striper all the time. I mean, Striper was the band I was listening to. My brother had plastered his walls with Jakey Lee from Ozzy Osbourne, the guitar player from Ozzy, Motley Crue, Iron Maiden. I had Striper. If I could have painted my room yellow and black, I probably would have. I didn't because I know Mom would have killed me. So about a year later, I had I'm trying to think of how it went down. My aunt and uncle came from Colorado with their sons, their two youngest sons, and they came. I think they spent like a week with us, and then I remember we were standing outside a circus here in Reno, and my aunt looked at my mom and said, "Did you ask him yet?" And my mom said no, and so she goes, "They want to know if you want to move to Colorado with them." And I was like, not really. I mean, I'm a mama's boy. I was a mama's boy, dude. I'm telling you, mama was my queen. You know, if my mom would have lit an orphanage on fire on Christmas Eve, I would not have loved her any less. I would have blamed it on the orphans. So, um, reluctantly, I accepted, yeah, okay, sure, why not? So we had gone there, or I had moved there with my aunt and uncle, and really wasn't into the Christian thing. I didn't go to church. I mean, I just, I didn't have anything against this. I just didn't want to go, you know. Um, Maybe thinking about it now that I'm telling the story, I just, I hated people, I just absolutely despised people, especially people who were trying to change me. Okay, well, you got to do this. You got to cut your hair. You got to stop listening to rock music. And I wasn't going to have that. So I moved to Colorado. And so I just, with a super Christian aunt and uncle, these were the people, the Christians that irritated me. These were the ones that were like super religious, and I was like, whatever. And after about the first week, I was just like, whatever. My aunt was like, I'll check into the high school if you want to go to high school. I'm like, I don't want to go to school here. I had this weird goal, because two of my brothers, my Jay and another older brother, Don, had went to Church County High School and graduated. Well, finished their schooling, I should say. Jay and I didn't graduate. But if I couldn't finish high school in the high school my brothers went to, I wasn't going to finish. I did. That was just my thing. And if another thing was, I could have done it. I could have got a high school diploma. I didn't want to graduate with another class besides the people I grew up with. And it's kind of ironic too, because I am still friends to this day with two guys that we started kindergarten together and went through school together. We're still friends. I don't talk to them very much, but I know who they are. They know who I am, and once in a while we'll give a thumbs up to each other's posts on Facebook and stuff like that. And so I didn't want to go. And so my uncle was like, well, you got two choices. Either you go to school or you get a job. And I said, I'll get a job. So I started working at this place called King Table Buffet, which was this huge buffet kind of thing. And I love buffets. The best. Sorry, sidetracked. That was my squirrel. Buffets are my squirrel. I'm telling you right now, you want to distract me, put a buffet in front of me. I will eat. So my cousin smoked weed. I mean, he goes, you want a hit? And I'm like, yeah, why not? So I'm a metalhead and I'm going to smoke weed, so started smoking weed, and we had to blow it out of straw that he had in his that went outside his window so it wouldn't be in the house. And so over time we started hanging out, and I went over to some of his friends' house that he knew, and we were talking and stuff like that, and I'm sitting there looking around. This guy had dragons, he had skulls, and different things like that, and I just kind of curiously asked him, like, what's with your decor here, dude? It's pretty cool. I mean, I love it. I mean, the skulls and dragons and stuff like that. And he goes, oh, it's my religion. I'm like, your religion? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I'm a Satanist. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like that. So I just kind of blew it off at that time. But the more I started actually going over there more than my cousin did. And so what had happened is I started going over there more and more and more. And the more and more I went over there, another guy showed up named Jacob. And Jacob's kind of an important part of this story. So we all started talking and stuff like that, and it was talking about Satanism and talking about different spells and stuff. I'm like, does that crap actually work? He goes, oh yeah, yeah, it totally works. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So he was showing us this one ritual and stuff, and it actually did work. I, you know, I'm saying it worked because at the time I really didn't understand. Uh, but now that I look at it, it was kind of more of a coincidence kind of thing, you know. I got a raise at work. You know, I was a busboy, you know, and they moved me from bussing tables to dishwashing and gave me a raise. It was all Satan, man. That Satan did that. He put this, you know, did this ritual for me, and it manifested. That's the way I saw it. It had absolutely nothing to do with my hard work, and me being on time all the time. It was because of the ritual that this guy did. I'm not saying his name because it's not worth repeating, but Jacob is, I only mentioned Jacob because Jacob was a pivotal part of my testimony. So the more we started talking and doing all this stuff, this guy had gotten this wild idea. He goes, you know what we should do? He goes, we should start a coven. I'm like, oh yeah, dude, totally cool. Yeah, we'll hang out here. You know, this will be our religion. You know, I am literally thinking that it was just going to be us three guys. And the following week, you know, when I went over there, there was 8 people there, and then 8 turned to 15, then 20. You know, and I'm going to say the guy's name. His name was Stan. And he come up to me. He was mad. I mean, he was just spitting nails mad. And I said, what's wrong? And he goes, man, he goes, I just got pulled over by the cops. You know, they were talking to me outside and stuff like this. And they were like sitting there saying, you know, people were blaming me for their animals disappearing and stuff like that. I'm like, why? It's all because of the Satanism. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Because they, you know, Satanists, you know, they sacrifice animals, stray animals. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I didn't see that in the brochure. But I'm like, what'd you tell him? He goes, we don't do sacrifices. I'm like, oh, okay, well, so he was mad. He goes, we got to do something because somebody's going around talking about this stuff, talking about what we do. And Jacob had told me, because we just gotta, you know, let the group know that, you know, we can't talk about what we do. And so at that meeting or mass or whatever you want to call it that night, Stan got up there and he says, I don't know who's been talking blank, but it better stop, and it better stop now. Like that. And Jacob and I were like standing next to him, and I'm like, yeah, kind of thing. And he goes, talking about what we do here will have its consequences, and these two will make sure. We're like, what do you mean us two? You know, it wasn't like that. We were just kind of like, yeah, you know, we just kind of like, yeah, talk some crap about us. And we didn't really have to really do much convincing, you know. So it was just known that if we were coming to talk to you, you messed up, and we had to have a talk with you. Never really got too violent. You know, we didn't even need to be violent. We just needed to be silent and just stand there. I mean, there were times where Jacob and I would just stand there and look at somebody and people would back down. I still, by the way, do that a lot today. I 6'4" biker, and I stare at people and they're like, okay. So that Sunday, you know, after I don't know if it was right after. I think it was maybe, I should say maybe about 2-3 months after everything got organized with the coven. I still was going to church with my aunt and uncle, and they went to and I always made an excuse. Oh, I have to work. Well, my uncle found out that I wasn't actually working on Sundays. I was actually heading over to Stan's house and stuff like that. Well, he goes, one of the rules of living in this house is you got to go to church. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So here's this guy with long hair. You know, I always wore my hair in a ponytail too. And so we're going to church one day. And I, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved my aunt and uncle. They were weird. I loved them. You know, God bless them. You know, may they rest in peace. You know, my uncle, super religious, looked in the rearview mirror and he goes, "Why are we going to church today?" And he made eye contact with me. He goes, "Why are we going to church today?" And he's expecting some super religious, because we're here to serve Jesus and we're going to learn about Jesus, and Jesus is going to bring all, you know, unicorn farts and rainbows and be happy. Right out of my mouth, before anybody said anything, I looked at him and went, "Because you're making us." And I saw his eyes go, and I mean, his eyes went big. My cousin was looking at me like, "What did you just say to the Father?" And I'm like, "Well, am I lying?" You know, kind of attitude. I was like, I didn't want to go to church. So, and I should tell, they changed church since I was there. And we walked into this one church, and I remember this church because it struck me funny, you know, because, you know, in baptismals, you know, if you've ever been to a old school or old school church back then, the baptismal was literally right up on the stage, right behind where the preacher is, and it had big crosses or whatever. Usually it had a big cross. Um, so I had gotten there and I'm sitting down and everything, and I'm looking up on baptismal, and I'm like, I'm not seeing a cross. But instead of a cross, I saw, and God is my witness, this church did not have a cross up in their baptismal. They had a full moon. And I'm like going, okay, well, there's no cross. What kind of church is this, kind of thing? And I never really questioned it. I was like, pretty cool. All right, at least there's not a cross there, you know. And so I had gone to church, you know, a few times like that, and I made sure, and I talked to my boss. I told him, I said, I need to work on Sundays. Make me work on Sundays. I'll work them. I'll work every Sunday. And so I said, write down the schedule so my uncle, I could show my uncle, I can't go to church. So he was like, okay, cool, whatever. So he wrote out my schedule. So I was not required to go to church anymore because I was always working. So, and after church, I would go home, you know, get dressed and head back over to Stan's house. And Stan and Jacob would always be there, and we'd be discussing things that were going on. Well, there was one time I was sitting there, and he goes, apparently our warning did not, had fallen upon somebody's deaf ears. And we're like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, this guy is going around, he's saying, you know, talking crap. He goes, I, you know, talked to him about it, and he said, oh, no. I didn't talk to him, but Sam was saying, you know, that he talked to him, and the guy was like, oh, no, I'm trying to bring more members in. I'm like, what are you, like a satanic Jehovah's Witness? Shut up, you know. And the guy was just like, oh, no, it's good. It's so cool. I'm just telling people I can trust them. We're like, okay, whatever. And Stan was like, nope, I don't want him talking about it. Unless one of us three invites somebody, we don't want new people here. We don't trust them. We trust no one. And I was like, okay, well, what do you want us to do? Because I want you to go have a talk with them. So we're like, okay, cool. So Jake and I drove around Colorado Springs where we were living. That's where it was, in Colorado Springs. And there was a park, and we saw the group of people, and we were sitting there looking, and it's like, we looked, and Jacob goes, there he is right there. I said, well, let's go. So, you know, as we approached the guy, we heard him sitting there talking to the guys. Oh, yeah, we do incantations, we do this, there's so much power, this and this. And he turned over and looked, he goes, oh yeah, here's two of the guys from the group. He called us a group. I mean, how stupid could you be? We weren't a group. We would have even accepted congregation, but no, he said group. And we're like, ooh, that sounds wrong. So he looks over, he goes, hey guys, how you doing? Like that. And I went, and so he walked over, and he goes, hey guys, I'll be right back. And so he walks over, made a mistake by putting his hand up on a tree, leaning up against the tree. He goes, hey guys, how's it going? He goes, you guys gonna be at the meeting tonight? I'm like, again, it's a meeting? Where are you getting your terminology? We took this thing serious. It was either coven, it was mass. That's what it was. It was coven and mass. If you used anything other than that, you were gonna tick us off. And so we started talking. He goes, I'm talking to my friends, I'm trying to see if they want to come too and stuff like that. And I looked at Jake, and Jake looked at me, and without even thinking, didn't even know I had this in me. I reached down. I used to carry a boot knife in my sock because I didn't wear boots. I wore black high tops. And I pulled that knife out, and I went like this. I ran it through his hand into the tree. And if you know how, let's say like this is the knife, this is the handle part, it literally went all the way through and pinned him to the tree like that. And he screamed and screamed and screamed. And I remember, I didn't even remember what was going on. And so I leaned into him, and I didn't blink. It didn't even faze me. And I leaned in and I whispered, I said, you open your mouth one more time, the knife's going somewhere else. And I went like this and went to pull the knife out. When I did that, it went out this way, and it tore his hand from here all the way up between his middle finger and his ring finger. And I looked at him, I said, no more. And Jake and I turned to walk away. Jake was freaking out. Jake was like, what just happened? And I'm mad. I'm fuming. I literally felt heat just coming off of me. I was just so angry. And we're walking away, back towards Jacob's car, and he goes, what the hell was that? And I'm like, dude, I have no idea what just happened. He goes, you could have killed him. And I'm like going, oh, dude, I can't process this. I got to think this out, dude. I'm going to walk home. He goes, no, I'll give you a ride. And I'm like, no, I need to figure this out. I'm tripping at this time because that wasn't me. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm not capable of something like that. So that was actually what, I should tell you now, I study Christian or biblical demonology, spiritual warfare, and in biblical demonology, there's a term, we don't use possessed because not everybody's possessed, we use demonization, but this manifestation of this dark entity had taken over, because I absolutely have no recollection of this whole incident until Jacob told me what happened. He told me about it like the next day. When he was explaining it to Stan, I'm like, okay, that I don't remember that, but all right, whatever, I'm still tripping. I couldn't even be at the meetings without, being ill. Is this what I'm becoming? Is this my life now? Am I going to be doing this for the rest of my life? So at the restaurant that I worked at, I had made friends with one of the cooks. His name was Chris, and I was telling him, he noticed something was wrong with me, and he goes, He goes, you all right? And I'm like, nah, I'm just going through something right now, dude. I just need to, figure it out. And he goes, what's going on? I said, I can't talk about it. He goes, no. He goes, come on, man. He goes, it's me. And I'm like, I said, let's go take a break, because I don't want to talk about it around other people. So we went out back, and behind the restaurant, we're talking and everything, and I just let him know. I told him everything, and I was like, told him everything I had done. And he goes, dude, you got to get away from that stuff, man. He goes, that stuff's not good for you. I'm like, duh. And I was like, I don't know what to do, man. He goes, what are you thinking about doing? I said, I got to get away. This is getting too real too quick, and I don't know. This is not what I signed up for, kind of attitude. And I'm like sitting there going, the only option I have right now, man, is to go back to Nevada. And he goes, all right. He goes, well, I hate to see you go, but you got to do what you feel best. I said, yeah, how am I going to do that? And he goes, don't worry about it. We'll get it taken care of. So the next day was payday, and I had, had money in my pocket. And I had told my aunt and uncle, like, this isn't working out. I'm going to go back to Nevada, or I'm thinking about going back to Nevada. And they're like, oh, no, we'll figure it out, And I was like, no. So, they had called my mom, and I was talking to my mom and everything. I was telling her, yeah, I'm just not happy here. I mean, I miss you guys. I miss Fallon. I really didn't miss Fallon. I do now. I love Fallon. I do miss Fallon the way it was back in those days. But I was like, well, and she goes, let's just give it a try. And it's like, okay, so I had told Chris, I said, well, I promised my mom I'd give it another shot, and I couldn't shake the feeling of what was going on. So I was like, I can't do this. And